We're live. We must be live now. We'll wait for someone
Okay,
to
so let's just wait for people to get in, I guess. Can you see? You can see people getting in, okay?
Yeah, that looks fine to me. Let us know you can see us, people.
All right.
Yeah, roll.
If you want to tell me when you think everybody's in, Kev, you can see numbers I can't from this end.
260. How many did we have last year?
I think we're over 500, maybe 600.
Let's see.
There'll be people just picking up, so we'll just give it another couple of minutes before we kick off, I think.
Yeah. Have you got any jokes or anything for the couple of minutes?
I'm just going to have a double check whether I've got any messages that people aren't getting in. I don't think I have, but I'm just going to double check.
It's like 300 now. Right, I reckon you start because people filter in. We're on 350 now.
Yeah, because it's so many people coming at the same time. It's sometimes a bit slow getting on. We had that same issue last year, so I think we just have to give people just a few minutes to get on.
Hello, Nikki.
Right, we're a couple of minutes past, so I think we'll kick off, shall we?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, look, I think numbers seem to be coming in now, so I think it's probably time to kick off. Thanks, Kev, for organising this as you do. It's becoming a bit of a tradition. So, for everyone that's on here, welcome to the 2025 Naiad. Looking at the numbers, I think we're probably going to end up with bigger numbers again this year than we had last year, which is great. So, I just want to say thank you to everybody for making the effort. I know 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening, people could be doing lots of other things. So thank you for joining us. It's obviously becoming a bit of a pre-festival tradition now for us to join the annual plunge, and hopefully we're going to take the bookies' pants down tonight. So let's face it, the bookies, we don't owe them anything. They're making it harder and harder for us to get any anti-post value each year. It seems to be harder than ever this year, if I'm honest. Value is becoming a thing of the past, and bookies seem to be slashing prices with any little excuse. They don't like us. They don't like anti-post punters, and they're completely risk averse. So any excuse, they slash a price. And even the good stuff they used to do, the concessions, they're disappearing or they're pretty useless. Cash out's a waste of time now. It seems that every bookie knows before we do because they're being fed information from the stables. But there are still some rare bits of value around, and my job is to try and find that and do this before that disappears as well. So hopefully we're going to use their price errors and that bit of value to make them wonder what the hell happened in a few moments' time, and we'll all hit the button together, and they'll go, "Shit, what happened?" Anyway. Before we get on to announcing the Naiad, I'm going to do something a bit different than I have in the past, and I'm going to ask you to do something, and I think really just contemplate what a tough couple of weeks it's been in racing. Probably the most significant thing that's happened is the pretty shocking and saddening passing of Mikey O'Sullivan, and that for me, and I'm sure for all of us racing fans, is the starkest reminder that those jockeys take a huge risk several times every day just for our entertainment and pleasure. And I can genuinely say that for someone that I've never met, I really can't believe how much Mikey's passing's impacted on me. I've been very quiet over the last 10 days for me, and virtually nothing on social media, nothing on the forums. I do send messages on some of the groups that I'm involved in, but probably less than I normally would. And if I'm feeling that way, I reckon quite a lot of you guys are feeling the same way too. And God only knows what Mike's family and friends are going through. They're obviously devastated, and it's something they're never going to get over. he can't come back. So I want to ask a favour from everybody. I'm going to do an extra bet this year, and I want to do it in honour of Mikey. Um, and if the bet comes in, I want to ask you guys to put 10% of anything you win into a pot that we give to Mikey's family to help with any costs they've had or towards a memorial. And if they feel as though it's something they can't accept, I'd ask them then to donate it to a charity of their choice. No compulsion to do so. 10% is only a recommendation. Give all of it if you want to. Entirely up to you. Or if you don't want to do the best at all, again, that's equally your choice. But I wanted to do something that I thought was poignant specifically for Mikey. Um, and there's no guarantee a bet will win. So if the bet doesn't win, there's no return on that bet. I make books on various races, and I'm going to donate 10% of my book on both the Champion Chase and the Grand Annual, irrespective of whether the bet wins or not. So there'll be something going to Mikey's family. So can I ask those of you guys that are willing to take part in this bit specifically to either open your Paddy Power accounts or your Betfair Sports book accounts? That would be the priority. And if you don't have either of those accounts, just open whatever is your go-to account, and then go to the Champion Chase. So if I just give you a minute or two to do that, as I say, there's no compulsion to do what I'm about to do at all. But what I am going to ask you to do is to go to 2 races and actually put a double on. And that double is on 2 horses that are very relevant to Mikey. When he rode all of those winners at the festival a couple of years ago, these are 2 horses that he actually rode, and they're actually running on the same day. It may well be that 1 or 2 of you have already thought about this before, and you may have done this as a double for yourselves. I don't know. But that's not the reason for doing so. So if you're on the Champion Chase, can I just ask you to put, if you're in Paddy Power or Sportsbook, go to the Without John Bond market. If you open that up, and on the Without John Bond market, can you go to Marine National? Now, clearly, that was one of Mikey's winners in that glorious festival for him. And once you've loaded that into your betting slip, could you also go into the Grand Annual? Okay, and if you're in the Grand Annual, can you load Jazzy Matty into your slip? If you're obviously in the Champion Chase and you're in one of the other markets, it's just Marine National anyway. And just so you know, guys, this is the bet that I've done. So I've backed that double to win 10k, and if that double wins, I will donate all of that 10k to this fund. You guys have whatever you want on it. Do whatever you want with that, or do nothing. Whatever you choose. But for those of you that have, I generally do appreciate it. And let's assume there's some returns. I'll post how and where to donate on social media. I'll put it on the Fat Jockey website, and I'll put it into the various racing groups that I'm involved with, and I'll do that immediately after the festival. So your help with that would be very much appreciated. If it doesn't come in, I'm going to donate anyway. You're welcome to join me, your choice. But I just thought it just feels like the right thing to do. For me, the Naiad's just a little bit hollowed this year, for that reason. And I was actually in 2 minds whether to do that this week, but it was a choice really. If I was going to do it, I had to do it because the prices are going. So I know a lot of you guys like joining in with this every year. So I decided that probably the best thing to do is just crack on with it. Okay, so on to the reason that we're all here this evening. Most of you guys know how the night came about, so I'm not going to repeat the full story. And I know there are several people that go, and thank God for that. But there are people here that have never done this before, so I just want to very briefly touch on it. So it's a bet that's been going since 2008, when Ferdy Murphy's Naiad de Mislo won the Coral Cup. And I backed him down from 33s down to 7-1. And he was the horse that started that tradition. He won the Coral Cup. I won a fair amount of money that day. And it was initially something that I just did with my friends, picking out one horse at the festival at a big price. And that then migrated onto a racing website forum that I used to use. And now it's evolved all the way to doing this live podcast, which I think is in its fifth year. Results over the years have been really good. We've had 5 winners, 9 placed horses, and only 3 that didn't make the frame at all. And I reckon a 30% strike rate and a win and play strike rate of 82% is pretty good for any bet. So the bet's made a lot of money over the years. The last 4 years been a bit tougher. It's produced 3 places and a loser. 2 of the places actually hit the bar. The loser managed to hit every fence on the way round. But having said that, Natalam then went on to win the Welsh Grand National by 60 lengths. So we were onto something. And he became a 160s horse. He ran in that autumn off the low 140s. I think doubly annoying, actually, thinking about it. The second choice for the Naiad that year was Coral Rambler. And second to Coral Rambler that year was Fast or Slow. So I think whatever would have happened, he was never beating those 2 anyway. So, at best, we were looking at a place. Anyway, I think we're due a winner, and I think we've got a really good chance this year at a Tatey price. So I'm hoping that this year is the one that gets us back on track with a winner rather than a placer. But he is a horse that I think will at least place, worst case scenario, and I think it has a great chance of winning. Anyway, this Naiad is something that we do every year for those newer guys, and it's part of a gamble that would genuinely go down into racing folklore. If you consider what we're about to do here, all of us pressing the button at the same time, our combined bet will be bigger than any of the amounts of those legendary gamblers that you read about. It will be that big. The amount of money going down and the returns on that will be that big. The weight of our money will have the bookies running for cover because of the combined liability. If you think about how many people are on this podcast at the moment, and everybody has, I don't know, 20 quid each way or whatever the amount is, the returns on that are huge. And I genuinely feel sorry for the poor evening or night shift traders who are sat there wondering what the hell just happened. Most of the traders I know are really good guys, to be fair, and it's not them that this is aimed at. But all that said, it's getting harder and harder now to find a horse with a genuine winning chance at any kind of price. I saw some stats a day or 2 ago that this time last year, I think the shortest price handicap winner that was available in the market was 16-1. So gives you some idea of how hard now it is to find value. And quite a few of those were already, quite a few of the handicap winners were already single figures. So it's getting tough. The bottom line is there's loads of information out there now. The bookies over rounds are off the charts, and getting for value is harder because the bookies just use any little excuse to cut a price. And only takes a social media account with moderate coverage to get a price cut. But the bigger challenge for us really these days is keeping accounts open, not getting prices. So I probably shouldn't moan too much. Anyway, bottom line is I'll have some sympathy for the traders, but I will have zero sympathy whatsoever for the corporate bookmakers who, quite frankly, are what it says. They're corporates and they just don't give a shit. We're just a way of them making money. They're not prepared to stand at any level of liability. They don't want winning bets, and they're just not bookmakers, as I say, the corporates. Bottom line is if you want a bookmaker, go to the rails. Those guys will stand you a proper bet, and there are some really good guys amongst them. Okay. Last year, on the day of the Naiad, the prices started to disappear during that day. And I've got no doubt that one bookie in particular had been tracking my accounts, and that bookie started to chip away at the price. And the price disappeared quite quickly. And I ended up in a position where I nearly had to abandon. It was a choice of whether to or not. Anyway, despite that, we picked up some good place money with the Goffer, which was last year's Naiad. He finished in the places, but didn't see the trip out. He just ran out of steam. I think Jack Kennedy basically just gave him too much to do, put him into the race too late, had to use up too much petrol. Anyway, I've taken some precautions this year so the bookies can't see where my money's going. Won't tell you how. And any price movement that's been there today, and there has been a little bit, is because people like the horse and they're backing it. And there has been some money, but fortunately the price hasn't gone, and we can get on at a good price. I've gone earlier than I planned to. I had planned to do this in a week's time, but there's been a fair bit of chatter about this horse in the last couple of days. I've heard some good cases starting to be made, and there's a couple of people that I really rate that have latched on to some of the stats that I pulled together as well. I think they've done something very similar, and they've started to talk about it. So it's only a matter of time before the price goes, and we just need to get on with it. And probably the biggest precaution I've made is that it's not the race that you're expecting. Most of you guys are used to me putting a horse up in the Ultima, and I'm going against the grain this year, and the horse is not in the Ultima. As I said, the horse that I mentioned, I think, has a great chance of winning. I'll recommend that you back it each way. Everybody has their own way of doing things, but my recommendation is that you back it each way. Because the fallback of my process is that I expect the horse to at least place. The horse is definitely aimed at the race, so I'm happy to advise backing it under anti-post terms rather than no runner, no bet. But if you want the precaution of no runner, no bet, that's entirely up to you. And I accept that things can happen between now and 2.5 weeks' time. So, stone bruises have been known to happen, all sorts of things. For me, it's a risk I'm prepared to make. Backing him anti-post terms. And for those of you who are perhaps a little bit less experienced, you may want to differentiate when you go into whoever you use. Some of the bookmakers have both anti-post and no runner, no bet prices. So make that differentiation when you go into your accounts. So firstly, let me start by telling you which accounts to open for the best prices in priority order. I had a check immediately before this, and I think this is going to be correct. And assuming you've got all the usual selection of accounts, this is the order that I personally would prioritize in. Firstly, I think you've got a choice to make because the top prices you would be opening either Sky Bet or Bet365. You'd use Sky Bet if you prefer 5 places rather than 4 places. You'd use Bet365 because they're top price. So that differentiation is the first I would make. So if you've got either of those two accounts, I personally would take the 5 places, and I'll concede some points. But if you want top price, go to Bet365. Bet365 are top price with this horse, and particularly if you guys back one only, you definitely want to go with Bet365. Then, after those two, if you want no runner, no bet, then use the terms with Bet365 and Coral and Ladbrokes for no runner, no bet. And then next one down for no runner, no bet, which is a lower price again, is Sky Bet, but you get your 5 places back. After that, pretty much any account you want, apart from Unibet, who quite frankly are fleecing people on the price, and they should be embarrassed. I hope somebody from Unibet is listening because your prices are appalling. Couldn't even consider using them, and you are almost half the price that's available currently with Bet365. That's how bad. So anyway, get your act together, guys, and stop moving markets just on what Nicky Henderson says. Rant over. So also, after you've made the Naiad bet, I'm going to suggest that you keep the same account open, whichever one you're using, and then put the Naiad back in your slip. Because I'm also going to recommend an each way double with the other horse that was almost the Naiad, was only marginally behind him in terms of all the criteria I use. There was literally nothing between them. So, I am going to recommend that you actually back him and put him in the double with Bustleton. You can back him as a single, but I think the double is well worthwhile. You're going to have to be as quick as you possibly can doing it, because obviously the price on the Naiad is going to go fairly quickly, and you're probably going to have to take a lower price while you're doing it. Okay, while you're opening your accounts, I'm hoping that most of you can stick around after the announcement so I can make a case to the selection, and why I think it's got such a good chance of landing the Naiad for us this year. Having said that, if your name is George and you're currently in a restaurant on a first date and you've got the audacity to be watching this on a first date in a fancy restaurant, you're definitely excused as the announcements happened, and you know who you are. Um, but if the Naiad then goes on and wins and the baby's born on December the 13th, I expect it to be called Paul. So, right, time for the Naiad. Some of you might have backed the horse, and if you have, just have a top up on your current bet. So we are all in this together at the same time. And just to say, only bet within your means at a sensible level for you, obviously. It doesn't matter whether you have a pound on it or whether you have a grand on it. Quite frankly, just whatever's normal for you. Right, I'm going to assume everybody's ready. So the race you want to go to is on Wednesday. So if you flick across to Wednesday, and if you open up the cross-country chase, and before you all get deja vu, no, it's not the Goffer. It's not the Goffer. This year's Naiad is Bustleton. Okay, hopefully everybody's got their bets on. Load him quickly back into your slip, and then go and open the Ultima, because we're now going to drop the reserve Naiad in as a double with Bustleton. And the reserve Naiad is Henry's Friend. Now that's a big price double. The place part of that is well worth having in a double. I think they are both solid for places. Okay, that's the main bit over, guys. We are going to fleece the bookies this year. I'm confident of it. I think we are in a really, really good position for a whole host of reasons. For those that want to stick around, I'm going to tell you what those reasons are now. If any of you guys have to go, the main bit's over, your bet's down. But I'm hoping you're all going to stick with me for a bit longer. I'll very quickly touch on Henry's Friend. I'm not going to make a big case for him because he's not the main horse. But the bottom line, I think it's a really weak ultimate this year. I was very tempted to use him as the Naiad. There's only a small number of horses that I think have any chance at all. Those horses, there's 5 actually. Changing Man, but at 12-1, I think he's generally a tens, but 12 best price. I think he's too short for a horse that gets beat far too often. I think he's a pretty solid each way bet or place bet, but he's got a mistake in him, and he always seems to find horses that get there that beat him. There's always one too good for him. I know he won last time, but that race completely fell apart. There was only one horse that he shouldn't have beat, that could beat him, and that horse fell. So he just basically managed to have a jog around. But in any race that's competitive, he wouldn't be one for me for a win. Second one is Broadway Boy. He's still available at 14-1. I am very interested in him. I think he's got a very good chance. I think he's probably going to head for the Grand National. So whether he's fully tuned up for this or not, I don't know. But the Twiston Davises tend to just take the chances as they come along. But I think the big thing with him is in a big field, he's got mistakes in him. When he's harassed for the lead, he seems to make mistakes. And he's certain to be harassed for the lead. There are a lot of horses that want to go forward in this race. And as soon as he hits one, his race tends to be over. He has to have a clean run of jumping, and that hasn't been a feature of his racing recently. The next one is Victorino. I think on all known form, Victorino is probably too big at 16-1. But my big doubt about him is whether Cheltenham suits. He flopped there last year, And if you actually look at his overall profile of where he runs well, you can see why Cheltenham may not suit. It's not something you can be categoric about. So I wouldn't be discounting him, but it gives me sufficient doubt about him. I think the only horse that I'd be interested from Ireland is Search for Glory. Affordale Fury is entered, but I don't think he'll come here. It's probably just a bit too high in the handicap now anyway. But Search for Glory would interest me. He's 143 in Ireland. And it's possible, I think they would prefer to probably run him in the National Hunt Chase or even the Kim Muir for that matter. But, there's a good chance that the handicap is going to have a say in that and he ends up above 145. If he ends up above 145, he'll probably come to this race. And I actually do think he has a proper chance. He might be Ireland's best chance of getting a victory in this race for some few years. And the last one is the best novice in the race that's entered. In my opinion, the best novice in this race. I had a discussion with somebody about this horse this afternoon, actually. I don't think he wins. I'm not sure he has enough class to win the race, but he's the horse I think is the best novice this year. There are very few of them because of the changing rules, so that has had an impact on this race. And that horse is Whistle Stop Tour. He's 33-1 currently, and I wouldn't put anybody off a saver in that race at 33-1. I think that's way too big. I've heard people say that Henry's Friend doesn't look particularly well handicapped. Well, I don't agree with that actually. I think with Henry's Friend, it's all about the way he runs. He only ever does enough to win. He's not one of these horses that's going to go and win a race by 10, 15, 20 lengths. And because of that, the handicapper never puts him up too far. And visually, he'll always make you think as though, he probably isn't going to win his next race. People will also point to last year's National Hunt Chase, but he made a terrible mistake, and that mistake finished his race. But the bottom line, he's usually a very good jumper, and he'd be a reasonably confident selection for the race. Actually, I think he has to go close to the race. There are dangers, of course there are, and there's dangers from the horse I've just mentioned. But I think I actually really do like his chances. Okay, let's talk about Bustleton. That's the horse that's the Naiad this year. So look, I admit there's some risk putting Bustleton up, given this is the first year the cross country has been a handicap for a long time. There's very little to go on. There aren't any recent trends to go on, but for me, that's exactly why there's value in the race with Bustleton. All that stuff's freely available out there at the moment. People are using it, people are backing accordingly, and that's why it's so hard to get on at a price. So actually, these new races, whilst I don't entirely agree with the National Hunt Chase and the new Jack Richards handicap. I would prefer to see those still as graded races because I think it dilutes quality. I do see the case of the cross country being a more interesting race, being a handicap. And as I say, I think it actually presents an opportunity because nobody has any trends. But if you actually do a bit of digging, there are some hidden trends that I can use, and I have. And I think they're pretty compelling, and they lead us towards Bustleton. It's not the only thing that I've used; there are other things as well. But I'm going to take you through my thought process with this first and the work that I've done. So the first thing is, look, he's guaranteed to get a run. He's number 15 of a maximum field of 16, and based on his rating, he's going to be close to bottom weight. He's likely to carry 10 stone 7, so he's got a nice light weight to go with it. I don't think many are going to come out of the final deck stage, so I think we're only looking at maybe 2, possibly 3 horses below him that will get in. Ironically, one of those, and the horse that's immediately below, is the Goffer. And I have to admit, I have had a saver on the Goffer. I couldn't not. Can you imagine if the Goffer bloody won this cross-country chase after I put Bustleton up? It'd kill me. Gordon Elliot's got 7 of the 16 in the handicap proper. So if he regards the Goffer as one of his genuine chances, at least one of them is going to make way. Because, as I say, it doesn't currently make the cut. I think Conflated might come out, Gevry might come out, but he'll certainly take something out to make sure he gets in the race. I'm going to get my one possible negative out of the way, and that's that Elliot has so many horses in that race. Having 7 in the race, he could place some kind of team orders. I think that's only going to come into play in terms of how they're run, and I don't think you'd have Aidan O'Brien type tactics going on. And I don't doubt that Elliot's been messing with some of his. He'll regard the likes of the Goffer and Chemical Energy and perhaps even Cocoa Beach as pretty well handicapped at the moment. At the other end of the handicap, he's also got Galvin, who doesn't look harshly treated over the cross-country course, and he's obviously going to be the class act of his team. And the money for him hasn't been insignificant, but he's going to have to give Bustleton £16. And that's where I think the angle comes. Looking at the impact of weight carry on the cross-country course is where analysis helps us. There have been plenty of handicaps run on that course over the years, and the trend is very much towards lighter weighted horses. The classy horses have only ever won the level weights cross-country chases. They have never won a handicap. It was a handicap from its inception, and it was changed from a handicap in after 2015. That's when they turned it into a levels weight race. And all of those horses in all of those handicaps prior to that, none carried more than 150 and won. The only horse that's carried actually 150 and dead on 150 is Balthazar King. And he did that with high weighted horse in the race, and he only had to carry 10 stone 9 with that 150 rating. That's a real standout. That's a lot of renewals with a lot of horses over 150, a lot of horses at short prices. All of them turned over, every single one of them. Not one horse over 150 has ever won a handicap on the cross country horse, ever. Closest horse to doing so was Guard Petra. He finished second one year. And aside from Guard Petra and Balthazar King, all of those 150 plus horses, no other horse is even placed in one of those races. So it suggests that the classier types can place. It's not impossible, but statistically, they're extremely likely not to. They're very vulnerable to the lower handicapped horses. So that was my starting point in analysing the race. I'm happy to strike a line through any horse 151 plus for the race, for winning the race. So the next thing I did was then looked at all of the non-festival handicaps. And look, I accept that there will have been horses like Tiger Roll turning up in those races early in the season in the past that wouldn't have been trying. But most have been. There's really good money for those races. They can't all go and win in March, and quite frankly, they didn't have handicap marks to protect. The bottom line is it was a levels weight race in March. So there was great prize money. There still is really good prize money to be won at the November and December meetings, and so I regard the data as usable and valid. And again, in the last 5 years, in those cross-country handicaps, in fact, it might be 6 years, no horse rated 150 plus has won, and only one has placed. Now, there's a bit of a picture building up here. So if you add in both lots of races, the festival handicaps, the original festival handicaps, and all of those November and December handicaps every year, only one has won and two have placed from 150 plus. And if I put that another way, no horse rated 150 plus has ever won a cross-country handicap at Cheltenham, and only 3 have ever placed. Now that's about as compelling as a stat as I reckon you'll find of all the stats that you can find for all of the festival races this year. And if I apply that stat, if you look at the head of the market, the horses that you think have any kind of chance, that only leaves Mr. Coffee and Vanillier. And for both of those horses, for different reasons, I would be reluctant to back them for win purposes. I do concede they could place, but I don't think they are particularly good win propositions, and certainly not at their prices. So if I take them out, which I have, for win purposes, it left me with a short list of Cocoa Beach, Chemical Energy, Bustleton, and the Goffer. That's it. Short list of 4. And there aren't many races at the festival, handicaps at the festival, where you can whittle down to a short list of 4. And I can whittle this race down to 4, less than the Ultima. And ultimately, that was why, because I could get to a much shorter short list, that was why I chose Bustleton over Henry's Friend, because the short list I had for the Ultima was a short list of 6. And that was the only thing, that was the deciding factor between those 2 horses. So, taking that statistical approach further, in the last 5 years, there have been 9 handicaps, 6 of which were won by horses rated between 137 and 140. The other 3 were, one was 145, one was 140, and the other 2 were 149. Now, that only discounts Cocoa Beach, who I've said I do think is possibly on a workable mark, but he has to be the first to go because he actually does miss that stat. And he's also likely to be carrying 11 stone 7, which, again, no horse has ever carried to win one of these cross-country handicaps. So if we consider the prime window to be 137 to 140, then that we take out Chemical Energy, who he also carries 11 stone, and that's another tough threshold to break. So the irony is that leaves me with Bustleton, and can you believe it, the Goffer. And I hope to God the Goffer does not come and do me after last year. Goffer looks as though he's been ridden pretty quietly so far this season, and obviously with this race in mind. So, and he's been gaining experience along the way. So, I can't find any reasons to properly discount him. But so is Bustleton. The doubt for me with the Goffer, and probably for all of us that were on him last year as the Naiad, and possibly after that, is what he'll find up the hill. He's previously been found wanting a few times when stamina's been required. I do think he sees his race out better now, but he's a hold-up type of horse, and you have to use petrol to get him into the race, and that's the problem for him. You have to use the petrol that he needs to actually get himself up the hill, and I think Bustleton will finish the race stronger than the Goffer will. And for that reason, when you're making that choice, I put Bustleton ahead of the Goffer. I do think he's the biggest risk to our selection, but I only think he's a risk if they go for a change in tactics and ride him prominently. But there's never been any sign of them doing that, and the bottom line is it's unlikely they're going to change now. They obviously think that he has to be held up, perhaps that he gets too keen, he needs to be behind horses, don't know what it is, but clearly that is the way they believe they have to ride him. At 8 years old, they're both young enough to be in their prime, and actually, again, when you're looking at eliminating horses, they've both previously won handicaps off lower marks, so we know that they're both on a winning mark. But the bottom line for me is, I think, and it would be no surprise at all if they finished in the same order as they did in the December cross-country handicap when they finished 7th and 8th, and I wouldn't be surprised if they finished 1st and 2nd. That would not surprise me at all. So if I take a non-statistical approach to it, by looking at Bustleton's career to date, there is a weird similarity to Tiger Roll's career to this stage. Tiger Roll was a really good juvenile. He was good enough to win what was actually a really poor triumph in actual fact, but it was probably more around the standards of a Boodles these days. But it showed he was able to transfer, that flat breed into obstacles fairly easily. In his early career over hurdles, he was never rated more than 140s, and then he completely lost his way for a couple of seasons. Went chasing, and ended up being a remarkable horse for such a chaser for such a small horse. He was still mostly a 130s chaser early on. Took a real good long time for things to start to click. And he was a second season novice when he won the National Hunt Chase. He had the habit of actually hitting a few fences. And the first time it probably really clicked properly was actually in that National Hunt chase. After a while, he lost his way again before he was sent to the cross country races by Elliot. And the cross country course just seemed to rejuvenate him. And I think that was to do with his jumping, if I'm really honest. The jumping, whilst you do more of it, is less of a test than some of the stiff fences that you get. So I think it helped him. And the one thing you'll say about Tiger Roll, he was really slick around that cross country course. He won 2 cross country chases. He was 8 and 9 when he won those 2 cross country chases. He was probably starting to decline when he was 10, 11, and 12, when he was touched off and beaten by Easy Land and Delta Work. But he was excellent over those hedges and banks. He really was. He was so fast. And now roll forward to Bustleton, who's also 8. He's had those similar spells and similar times of losing his way at the same times in his career. He was a really good hurdler. He was a juvenile, did really well. Lost his way, then went chasing, became a progressive chaser, and then got lost again. And now it looks like it's the same kind of thing. Sending to the cross country, rejuvenating. And his ability seems to be on the rise again. And I think that may be by design. He's shown good form with a recent flat win. And since then, he's been given some really quiet rides. Quite frankly, it's worth watching those rides that he's had since then, just to see just how quiet. And he hasn't been wearing the usual blinkers that he'd be wearing. He's been around the cross country course twice in November and December in those races. If you watch the race to see how he travels around that course and see how he jumps that course, he's taken to it really, really well. Forget, the results, because quite frankly, he wasn't bloody trying. He was held up and he was never asked anything in either of those races. So I'm hoping the pattern holds up a theory that I've had for a long time, and that's that these classy flatbred ex-juvenile hurdlers, when they reach this kind of age, stamina really takes over, and they're really suited by these marathon type trips. 3 miles 6 down round Cheltenham, I think, is probably perfect. And that cross country course is flat. You don't get the undulations you get on the other course. And I think the other thing is these flat types, they're suited to this unique test of obstacles and banks on a twisting cross country course. They seem to be able to use their build to zip around it without using the same amount of petrol as the national huntbreds do. And if they're around at the business end of the race, generally they have more pace than the national hunt types. Tiger Roll really zipped around the course, and it was a huge advantage to him. And having watched Bustleton in those runs, he is a really good quick jumper of those obstacles, and he was plenty good enough over the banks. As I say, he's just not been able to race. Guaranteed, when we get to March the 13th, is the reapplication of the. Is it the 13th? No, it's the 12th, isn't it? The reapplication of the blinkers, and him racing more promptly is going to improve him by a stone. And there's nothing in this race that looks like it's got anything like that amount in hand. And the Goffer hasn't. That's another deciding factor between the 2 horses. I think it's also worth considering that Joseph O'Brien's managed to get him dropped another £4 this season, so he's getting lumps from better fancied horses. And this is his lowest chase mark since the 2022 season, when he was having his success over fences. So, look, it's not that long ago, at the start of the jump season, he had a flat run. He was winning off 80 on the flat, so there's no problem with his ability. And last time, the previous time he had a flat run, he followed it with several good runs over fences, and a spell of racing that culminated in him finishing 5th in the Hennessy when he was off 149 that day. He's 138 now. He's £11 lower than that. And he was giving weight to all of the 4 horses that were ahead of him in that Tennessee, or Coral Gold Cup as it is now. And amongst those 4, and one place ahead of him was Corrick Rambler. And he was giving weight to Corrick Rambler. As I say, he's a full £11 below that rating now in the cross country. So yes, there's dangers. Galvin, I think, can go close, but I think the weight will do him. Mr. Coffey will finish second to anything. Cocoa Beach is starting to look as though he's handicapped okay, but he's got a really big weight. I think Elliot's been messing around with chemical energy, but I think he's got too many stats to defy. Stats don't beat horses, but I think you have to have a process of elimination. I admit that the Goth would be a mortal blow after being last year's Naiad, but I just don't think his run style is ideal for him to get up the hill, and I just don't think he's as well handicapped as Bustleton. I think Bustleton's the best handicapped horse in the race, and I think the course suits him. I think the final thing for me is, Joseph O'Brien's as shrewd as it comes when it comes to handicaps at big meetings. He doesn't waste bullets. He doesn't waste them at Cheltenham, and I'm no doubt at all he's just plotted Bustleton for this from a long, long way out.
We know
He's
he's
got the very shrewd Kevin Blake in his corner, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kev's done some similar profile on the race that I did, and that Bustleton's been laid out accordingly. I could go on with the reasons, but having him on board at the price we have, and I think he has such a good chance, is probably enough anyway. So look, guys, I've waffled on enough. I think just the fact that we'll be cheering him on together is a massive buzz. It certainly is for me, and I know a lot of you guys join me to actually watch it live at the course, which is just fantastic. It really is such good fun. Just imagine that feeling whether you're at the course or not. If he's in contention going over the last, there's going to be some sore throats and sore voices as well as sore heads on the following morning. And God, what a feeling that's going to be. So, guys, let's hope we have the bookies pants down. That's the Naiad 2025 Bustleton. Cheers, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.